I'm excited to talk to you, Kate. I'm a local politician in Aarhus City Council. My name is Anders, and I represent the Social Democratic Party, so the Labour Party in City Council. And I have a variety of different what do you call it, offices. I'm a political spokesperson. I'm chairman of our sustainability committee, and I'm in the economics committee, and second chair, vice chair of the children's and youth committee, etc., etc., etc. In local politics, we have a lot of different roles. So I think I'm up for almost any question, I hope, and I can deliver some kind of information and just have a good dialogue. And I think that's very important, and it's good just to talk politics. If you have the time, there are some more nuances and some more quality in that discussion. So that's just great. So that's the short introduction to me.
Yeah, that's great. I'm not sure how much has been said about me, but maybe I should just go ahead and make the introduction. Yeah, so my name is Kate Dahl. I am an American. I come from Michigan. I like to say I come from Detroit because, it sounds more like, like gangster. Eminem's my homeboy. I come from Motown City, but I actually come from a small village in the middle of nowhere. I come from a very conservative religious community, broke out of that, and a long story short, I lived in Europe for like 13 years, and then I fell in love and met my now husband, and he's Danish, and we now have our 6.5-month-old, who my husband is now trying to get to sleep, and why I was a minute late to help with that a little bit, so I'm trying to not be so loud. But yeah, and now I've been working. When I came to Denmark, I worked in sales. I worked in the sales startup industry in Aarhus for about like 4.5 years, and then because I've seen a lot of international struggle with the Danish labor market and integrating into the Danish labor market and to get a job, I decided to start my company which is Career Denmark, and I teach internationals how to basically I teach job search strategies based on the experiences, because I've had more than 5 jobs within a 4.5-year period, and so a lot of my I don't have as many local questions for you, to be quite honest. There have been some more national questions that I have that I know that, but it's more for me just to, being part of this is more about just, helping internationals become more educated, not only about the party, but also maybe some of the differences with local versus, the national, and it's for me, just, important to have a discussion so that then internationals in Aarhus who will be able to vote in the upcoming election will be informed with their decisions. And then, of course, Louisa, if you have questions that you want to go in regarding more of the focus on the local stuff, feel free to ask. I've tried to prepare some more of the local stuff because I've been a regular, and I'm trying to ask different questions than from previously. But yeah, so let's just take the discussion and let's see what happens, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So should I just go ahead and start, or what should?
Yeah, I think just go ahead, Kate. We have like 40 minutes, so
okay.
You go ahead. Yeah.
Great. So one of the issues that has been on my mind for quite recently, especially since the whole COVID crisis, is regarding the issue of international students not being able to pay back their SU to the COVID crisis. What has been happening is that there's been relief packages for, with A-Casa and for different, people and for businesses, of course, due to the COVID crisis, which is understandable. But what's happening is that with especially international students who are EU citizens, because the restaurants and, cafes have closed down in the past months, until there's been this recent reopening, they have not been able to, it's not that they have not lost their jobs. I mean, they still have their jobs. They just weren't able to work, and they couldn't get the number of hours needed, which is, and it was difficult for them to find something different. And this has resulted in them either quitting their education and leaving Denmark, or in being in serious debt. So my question is what would you do to help bring relief to these, or what would your party do, or what are you able to do as a local politician in Aarhus to help bring relief to these students, and especially those who live within the Aarhus area?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a difficult question also, because there are three types of legislation. There's EU legislation, there's national legislation, and there are local legislation, all affecting this area. I think the most important thing we can do locally is to stimulate the economy and create more jobs, and that's what we're trying to do. We just last week signed a new partnership deal, trying to create more jobs for students, collaboration with the university, with the other educational institutions, in order for more international students to get student jobs as well in Denmark while in Aarhus studying here. We've seen a lot of the international students leaving Denmark this past year, as Danish students have left foreign countries as well to go home due to the crisis. So I think it's been a weird year to be an exchange student, and an expat student in Aarhus as well as in the rest of the world. So yeah, I think the main thing we can do is to create a better economic environment for our businesses in Aarhus, so they will be more likely to employ internationals as well. And I think, as you mentioned yourself, the restaurants, the bars, etc., the reopening also creates jobs. We think they are not permanently lost jobs, so I think actually we will see a quick rise in job opportunity again. So economic stimulus is, I think, the best way to solve some of the issues you raise here regarding this job situation.
And what would your party's stance be like? Because I would imagine that this next question is more of a national one, because I know a lot of students have gone to, those who are in charge of SU, and have told them the situation, and they're like, well, you just have to pay back. And would this be more of I would imagine this is more of a national, but what would your party, if it's not a local question, if it's probably, I would imagine, more of a national question, I guess. But I would be curious to know what they would, or what your party's stance would be on solving this issue with regarding the debt, if that debt is just going to be there. I mean, it's very likely that what would happen is that if they're not staying in Denmark, they would just walk out, and then God knows you can't find them again, and they probably wouldn't pay the debt. But I know a lot of internationals want to stay, and so what would be done to help encourage them to stay, so that then if those who are in debt, what would your party stance be on making sure that some really who are affected on this currently will get the relief that they need?
I think to answer your question, I would have to say that a quality I think is good in a politician is that when a politician don't know the correct answer or an actual answer, they say it openly. And honestly, I don't know the answer for this one, because I think it's deeply regulated by EU. I think that it's definitely not within my reach, my powers, but I think it's in an EU regulation, a national regulation, sure. and hopefully I think it can be resolved. And I think what we have seen from this past year is that a majority of parties on Christiansborg and in our Folketing, they have tried to say that a lot of situations caused by the COVID, we cannot let that affect people's lives forever. That's why we as a community, as a country, spend billions and billions of kroner to support educational institutions, businesses, etc. So I think this shouldn't be an exception, but I don't know the concrete or the actual policy on this one. So just to be completely transparent and say I don't have too much knowledge on that exact.
No, and that's topic. Fine. I'd rather you give an answer like that than you telling me something that you don't know. I appreciate your honesty, right? And that's also one of the Danish values that I absolutely love.
Not by politicians, I'm not sure.
Right.
But we'll give it a try on this one.
Fair enough. So these are a little bit more harder questions regarding national, so just bear with me. But these are very, very important questions that are very, very close to me right now with some current legislation that has been made. Because I understand your current party has helped in making the decision to strip away like the residency rights of Syrian refugees, as your party has deemed like Syria to be safe. To go back to, and even though it is not deemed like safe enough for Denmark to have an embassy in Syria, and as Denmark does not have an official relationship with Syria, as I understand, they will not, and because there's a current war going on, etc., they will not be deported directly, and so they will be sent to these detention centers within Denmark. And having them in these detention centers will cost the taxpayer a huge amount of money to have them in these detention centers. And you know, as I've worked with refugees as well, so like at least the ones that I work with are highly educated. Of course, there are that aren't, but I know that there's been a lot of money pouring into refugees with having them taking Danish courses, you know, having an education, learn, you know, and also to help to integrate into Danish society, and all of this work is basically just is now like being thrown in the air, like and it has cost the taxpayer enough money already. So why not let them stay and work in Denmark to contribute to Danish society instead of having them sit into these refugee camps in Denmark?
Yeah, a big question, very difficult question. I think it's a question of national politics, but I'll try to give some perspective on it at least. I do not agree 100% with the immigration policies. I think the rhetoric is much worse than the actual politic, but I think the way you speak of immigrants and refugees among some politicians, including in my own party, I disagree with the tone. Let's say it that way, quite diplomatically. It's not parties, it's not politicians that decide when refugees should go home. It's judges and lawyers in an independent agency called Flygtningenævnet. And I think that's good. So it shouldn't. It's of course based on a law made by politicians that says that when your country is deemed safe, and when this independent agency deems one country safe, then people who are not in risk of, I don't know the terms in English, but concrete repression, or that have not fled because they were a part of some family or due to sexuality, etc., etc. And of course, I also think it's a little strange that we have an agency in Denmark saying that based on a lot of different types of information, that for some groups it is safe to return when some other agencies in other countries. So that can be a discussion, but I'm glad it's not politically a political. It has become a political discussion, but the agency does not rely on it's not a political assessment. It's an independent agency that assesses this, and that agency is made up by lawyers, judges, and so forth. So, and I think that's a good thing. Regarding Syrian refugees staying here, I think, yeah, of course, if you are in risk of terror when you get home and such, I think, of course, you should be allowed to stay, and that's Danish law again. The risk, I think, there are two perspectives. I think it's important when discussing refugees as well. That is, first of all, if I think a principle of the refugee system in the world is that when your country is on fire, like Syria was, we should provide you shelter, safe, and we should not just park you somewhere. We should try to integrate you into society. But when crisis is over, and of course that can be a discussion, but if crisis is over, let's say it that way, then if we allow everyone to stay who fled, it was the most educated, it was the academic elites, we create an entire brain drainage of these countries, because the doctors, the lawyers, etc., they were the ones that fled. They are a lot of the ones with great educations that stay in Europe. So if we just say, because you stay here, then I think the Syrian people at home would have a big problem. So that's one perspective. And secondly, I think there is an amount of refugees a country should take. From a local perspective, we can have some immigration issues as well, both economically and socially. I think that's not to deny. But that being said, I think we need to be able to shelter other refugees that come from other conflicts around the world. So I think that's a perspective, and if we let everyone stay here and finance that, then there will be less financial resources to help other people. So a lot of, I think it's a very big question, a very difficult question, and I think pros and cons and everything. Yeah.
I mean, I agree to some extent, but the issue, and it's interesting that you mentioned this agency, because like it's like a lot of EU leaders, and I mean Denmark is the first saying that we are going to take away the residency rights of the Syrian refugees.
For some.
That's okay. That's a fair point. Some, depending on the region, etc.
But Kate, can I just set something straight with the refugee board? Actually, they're not quite objective. I must say something changed during the last government. There was 5 members of the board, 2 from 2 different ministries, and then 1 professor and 2 NGOs. Støjberg changed that to 2 people from different ministries, and then 1 NGO. So you can kind of see that it switched. Before there was kind of an objectivity. Now it's more depending on the political views. And actually Jens Vedsted, who was in the board during the last government until they changed this setting, he also said it, and said it publicly, that this is a problem. So that's just to set it straight, that it's not totally independent. It's actually depending a lot on the politicians right now. But that's just to set.
But I do not agree on that. But
yeah.
that is political appointments. If you go onto the agency or the board's website, you can see the members. And I don't think that judges appointed here or lawyers appointed here or people from the ministries appointed here.
It's just 3 that's making the decisions, Anders. That's just what I wanted to say beforehand. That was 5. So I studied jura and then or law. That's said in English, and I actually studied immigration law, and I had Jens Vedsted as a professor. So that's just to make it clear that things have changed within that board as well.
But the point I want to make is more about, like, let's like take out the board and everything out of that, and let's just take it out for just hypothetical reasons. I mean, even the United Nations and the human rights have criticized Denmark, and these boards have said that Syria at this time is not safe to go back, and that these, let's take even the selected ones, might risk being arrested or even losing their lives. So, and I just wanted to put that into perspective as well. But anyways, I would like to move on to many more questions within the series that are very relevant to me and affect me. It is more of a national level, but this is very, very important to me as of now. And that your party has voted in making a lot of citizenship requirements tougher than ever before for immigrants like myself to gain to have permanent residency and for Danish citizenship. And one of these requirements is within that you have to work for 3.5 years within the past 4 years to get permanent residency. And my story is, like I've mentioned already, that I have had 5 different jobs within 4.5 years. And I'm a very highly educated woman. I have a master's degree from Germany within humanities. I really came for love. Like Denmark was never the plan. I was planning to go to Brussels originally, and then like love happens. I lived in, I lived in Flensburg. He's in Aarhus. We're going back and forth, right? And and now that results in a Danish pastry and American pie baby. I mean, and it is like the American European love story or Danish love story, right? And I have worked so hard, even before these new immigration requirements, have done everything that I could to get the full-time work. And what has happened was that because of the stress of this, going from one position, getting let go, another position, and then one was part-time, one was temporary, and all of this, I believe, was sincerely the cause of my depression, and where I was on medication, and then I wasn't able to work, and then that's also kind of and then it changed my life in the perspective where I decided to take a positive into a negative and create Career Denmark in the way so that then internationals do not go through the same mistakes that I did, and to learn not only a Danish cultural context, but also to learn from an international myself, from not only the positives, but also the negatives. And so now that I have, having my business and contributing to Danish society, it's now for me even tougher now more than ever to prove this within this full-time work experience. And I'm only doing this as well for my own sanity and to become happy, because at the end of the day, I just sincerely just want to be happy with my family, and with my Danish family. And now because of these new rules, it's going to make my situation weaker. And I have sincere worries, like every day. And I've said this with past politicians. I have sincere worries that one day something will happen where I will be kicked out and I will be separated from my son, God forbid. And why, and maybe this is what I need clarification on, is like, why do I, married to a Dane who is highly educated, has the Danish son who has contributed to Danish society, is married to a Danish man, need to renew my visa every few years with the fear and risk of one day being kicked out and be separated from my Danish family?
My brother, he's married to Amelia Mitchley, and as the name indicates, she's from New Zealand. Okay. So from personal experience, I know this can be rather tricky, to say the least. So I think it's difficult law. I'm not no expert on that, and it's a national agenda. But just to ask, don't you have residency here?
Not permanent. I have family reunification right now, and I was only able to come to Denmark at the time 5 years ago was because of the green card scheme. And the green card scheme allowed me to be able to come to Denmark, work in Denmark, and to even find out if I want to be married to this man. I just gave me the opportunity. I'm sorry?
Are you married today?
I'm now married today, yes. Very happily married. We've been together for 9 years, actually.
Perfect.
Long time.
That changed the immigration policy, because it's the same with my sister-in-law, Amelia. They married, and it created a lot more. It reduced the amount of stress regarding immigration policy significantly.
To some degree. At the time, it was more of like when I did it, it was more about like, because I was saying earlier, like the green card scheme originally like helped me to move to Denmark to see if I were living together was going to work, and for first, and then we decided to go with family unification. The only reason we married, and we married because of love. And that's it wasn't like for us to, of course, getting married is easier in the way to process the the visa, not visa, but the requirements to some degree. But what we liked with the current option was that about living together. And actually, before we got married, we actually were under the old family unification rules at the time, where we were proving that we were living together. So that it didn't add the pressure of feeling that we had to get married. And that was the other thing, because we weren't even sure if we were going to get married. But then he decided to, go down on one knee in Hillbjerg. And of course I said yes. Like, it was a natural step. So, and I think like that makes it so much easier, because I talk to so many, even my own students who are living abroad, who have or even I have a student now who's an American studying in Ireland, has a Danish husband, and they're like, it's so much more complicated than it was 5 years ago, and they're like, I feel like the only way to stay in Denmark is to get married. And I think it's a shame to feel that type of pressure, that you feel like you have to do that to stay with someone. And that's why I liked the old rules in the way of giving that idea with the test of the water a little bit, to even see if there's that possibility, because I would have, if I decided I didn't want to be in Denmark, I would have just gone back to Germany easily, so yeah.
Can I just add also I agree with Kate, because I'm actually also married to a foreigner, and we've been together for 12 years, and he's still renewing it every 4 years, even though that we have 4 children together. And the funny part is that the thing that he has to renew it every 4 years, if we separate, he will of course see his children, and he can't be kicked out of the country due to international conventions, but he still has to renew it. So it seems so odd, because we can't get rid of him, but we still have to do the paperwork. That was just to give another example. And it's only because our children...
Can he get the permanent residence,
No, because he's only had... that's also the work requirement. He's been working the whole time while he's been in Denmark, but now he has 34 hours per week. But before that, he's been working for 2.5 years, 29 hours per week. They wouldn't give him the last hour, because then he had some more rights at that work, and he explained his situation. So it's just to show that there's so many people that really, get caught in that dilemma.
Sure. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, definitely.
But I actually have a local question, if it's okay, Kate.
Yes, please go for it. We need more local than national, please. Because that's all I really have, mostly.
It's the schools in Aarhus, Anders. Actually, the numbers of children in each school class are going up. And in Aarhus South, where I live, it's 28 students in each class, more or less. And also the special classes, the numbers of children are going up. What's your party's take on that?
Different takes. I think it's quite important to have a discussion on quality of the educational system, and of course there's a numbers in class discussion, and there's a discussion of number of teachers in classes discussion, which can be a bit related. I would say the average number of students in a school in Aarhus is 22.1. So the picture is a little different around different schools and different classes. So in some classes there are 28, and in most there are well a lot less, I would say. I'm, as I said, I'm vice chair of the youth and children and youth committee. So I think it's very, very important that we have a strong public school system that can help people from both challenge people with great academic skills, and also help those that come from home with less academic skills. So I think our public school is one of the most important institutions, in my opinion, within our reach, I would say, because I think it's a great opportunity to meet people and children from different kind of areas and different with the different type of parents, and see that there are differences. I think it makes us more, as human beings, more tolerant. And then of course there's a very important discussion of quality and the learning regarded in relation to our school system. So yeah, I would say it's very, very important to me also to discuss. I think number of children in classes is one type of discussion, but also the are we good enough to help those children that do not like academics? Are we good enough to have movement in the class? Are we good enough to teach math, etc., etc., etc.?
Can I ask you, Anders? There's a lot of talk about the infrastructure in Aarhus, and there's a lot of talk about buildings getting taller and almost got a skyline. Do you think a big Aarhus is a better Aarhus?
No, I don't think it's a goal in itself. But as some probably have noticed, it's getting more and more expensive to live in Aarhus, to buy, to rent, and there's one or two solutions to that issues. If you can do nothing, and then the prices will just rise. That's, in my opinion, my political view, is not a good way to go, because that makes it impossible for regular people with normal educations to be able to afford living in Aarhus. And I think a mixed city is a really good city, where people from different incomes can be able to settle, and not just the city of academics and elites. So that is my perspective. And in order to create cities, or a city where people with regular incomes also have the opportunity to live, it is necessary to build more. If we do not do so, the prices will skyrocket, and they are already, in my opinion, somewhere where it becomes very difficult for people with normal incomes to settle. And I think that's a big problem. So no, bigger is not always better, but the supply of houses and apartments is necessary if you want to reduce the level of rent and for regular people to be able to buy. And then the second solution is that 25% of all new building areas should be what we in Danish call alment, which means that they have traditionally have and over time a lower rent level than private owned buildings and apartments. So I think trying to create a city where people with that work with their hands, people that work as nurses or social workers, etc., also have a chance to live. We need to do both. So bigger is not better, but a city where people of different color, income, etc., mixed city, we need to do so. And of course, then there can be a discussion of quality. Is some of it ugly? Is some of it too tall? Yeah, I agree with some of that to some extent. Some of it I don't like. Some of it is good. Some of it could be better and such. But hope it makes sense.
It does.
Kate, go ahead. I'm sure you have more questions.
Yes. Actually, I have. Well, it's just a matter of time, and I'm trying to prioritize the questions. So I would like to ask a question more. Again, it's more about the question on citizenship and the current new rules regarding that. So, as I understand,
maybe just disclaimer. I'm not completely. I'm not sure how the new rules are exactly. They were I think last week or something like that, and I read a few articles about it, but I'm not. I don't know it to detail, so I will probably have trouble answering your question. Just a disclaimer.
Okay, no, and that's fine. And if you, of course, if you say I don't know, it's totally fine, because again, like, I appreciate that much more. It's more about me, about understanding certain things, and of course, if my facts are not correct, of course, but I did the research, and I've done some article research on this as well before coming, but anyways, so. Maybe, and I'll give the facts as I understand it regarding the current citizenship and the rules. And mostly I want to focus on in this question regarding the citizenship test, because as of now, as I understand, as of today, is that there are a total of 40 questions that cover like Danish history, politics, economics. We can go on, like Danish norms, society, etc. So as of now, with the new rules, that there are 5 additional questions about Danish values, and they're going to be currently added. And these 5 questions will be about freedom of expression, like equality, and now especially about religion. And so the agreement has emphasized that to pass the test, one has to like correctly answer 4 of the 5 questions. And so foreign nationals that are applying to become Danish citizens could potentially face. Also, they have to take individual interviews designed to test whether they have Danish values, and that the immigration ministry has set out like to how to put it, to model the potential future introduction of such an interviews. And then the idea behind the citizenship interview is to assess individual applications on how far one has adopted Danish values contrary to their religious beliefs, as I understand it. And as critics have argued that these questions and interview processes are specifically designed to target Muslims and to make them choose between Islam and Danish values. And as I understand, this violates the Danish constitution, which guarantees freedom of speech and religion. And and this is maybe your, again, I was more curious about your opinion, if you agree on this, and if not, why?
It's a very difficult question to answer, because I don't know. I think it sounds pretty crazy that if some specific religious community is targeted in such a test. It sounds odd to me. I can say though that I think that that citizen test is a bit foolish in my opinion. I think showing commitment to Denmark is shown in other ways than knowing who was mayor in X city or who was the prime minister in the 80s and such. I think there are better ways. And of course, we measure those as well. But I think contributing to the Danish society in terms of raising a good family, creating a good home, contributing with your taxes is a way better proxy than some random questions, I would say. So I don't know the exact new test form. I think that specific type of test form is a bit ridiculous in my opinion.
Okay. That's interesting. And maybe because I'm not sure how much time we are, but I do want to go a little bit back to like maybe I'll skip the other questions regarding the new citizenship, but I want to go back to the permanent residency rule and more about it's more about education. And I want to continue on with this idea with the 3.5 years that you have to work full time for 4 years with or 3.5 years within 4 years to get permanent residency. And maybe to add to this, question I had earlier, like many internationals who come here at a very young or age or born and raised here, the issue with this new rule, in my opinion, is that they will be forced to work full time at 18 instead of being able to have the opportunity to like study at university, where they can potentially fill the needs of the Danish labor market. And also like within Aarhus, I mean, Denmark needs labor. And so and I'm curious to learn more about what you think about the idea of like, or your party's idea of like, instead of making it easier for these young people, like to make it easier for them to have an education in Denmark, instead of like effectively enforcing social dumping because they will be forced to take low skilled jobs.
Yeah, the way you put it, I think it sounds pretty awful. And I'm not sure if that's the reality either, to be honest. So there might be, I don't know the specific laws, but I have not heard of anyone born in Denmark being forced to work at the age of 18 instead of taking an education.
If they want to gain the permanent residency, they will have to do so if their parents haven't gained citizenship before they turned 18. If the parents gain citizenship before they turn 18, then they can apply as an extra person on that application for citizenship. If not, it is true that when they turn 18, they either take a university degree but don't gain permanent residency, or they will focus on working and getting the security of a permanent residency. So it's
but on a temporary residency, you can take your education and work and etc. So I'm not sure.
As it is now, people are quite worried because the politics are changing so many times. I can say again for my husband, you get really insecure, so you don't know what's awaiting you next year or the year after. So you just want that permanent residency to feel secure. It's very important.
But I understand that perspective. So it's more of a feeling than necessarily reality. It can be a fear of future reality
I think for the refugees that have come here with their parents, it's actually a fear that's quite present, because as we're reviewing their applications, I think it's very present. It's more present than it is for my husband. But again, I know
but I think it's also two types of very different people living here. If you're a refugee, if you are working here, if you're married here, I think you have to separate some of these discussions, because
but right now
so
we're doing it all together because it's the same rules and regulations, and that's a problem.
It's so complicated. So I think it's to have nuanced discussions. You have to separate this big area of immigration, refugees, residency, and in different areas.
Actually, that's a question that I would love to make, if that's okay for you, Kate.
Yeah, go ahead. Go for it.
Anders, it seems like you actually have an opinion on this matter, because you also have something in your family that shows you how ridiculous the rules sometimes are. How would you try to affect your party to maybe make that distinction between family reunification and asylum seekers? Because it's quite two different things, but right now they're pooled, and many people are fighting for the family reunification staying in another pool than the immigration area.
Yes.
Well, I think it's great talking to people like you that, as well as me, have family and feel these issues in reality, and for some people on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And I think the most important is an actual discussion about this. And I think you guys pushing us is a very good initiative. And then I talk to MPs regularly, and I'll raise the question for them again. I think it's a good point. So it's noted.
That's great. Thank you. I appreciate it a lot, actually. And I would like, my last question to you is more on a positive note. So, what are the Social Democrats doing currently to attract internationals into the Danish labor market, or what would you do as a local politician of Aarhus to help attract internationals to coming to Aarhus and to the region, and what policies would you create to do that? I mean, of course, you talked about creating jobs. That's the obvious one, but I would be very, very curious if you have anything else to add to that. So,
yeah, I think one of the bigger issues regarding the expat community is that it can be very difficult to integrate into to what I would call regular Danish society. That we as Danish people are not necessarily the best at inviting our expat new colleague home, or so that I think there is actually a work to do on workplaces and in the municipality, as well as in welcoming and introducing expats. So I think that's one major issue, making people feeling at home. This is your new city, maybe for a year or two, or maybe for some people for the rest of their life, if they, as you said, find love or whatever happens. So that's one thing. And then I think we need to create a good surrounding. So we're now creating we just financed a new a kindergarten, international kindergarten as well, to help for the international community. We have introduced some welcoming, different welcoming. What do you call that? Every year committees as well, but also inviting all new expats to some gatherings where we introduce, and so I think definitely there's potential in creating an even better environment and bridging the cultures between some expats and of course so the regular Danish people. It's in my opinion it's sad that I think too many expats also come in here. Maybe if you're a wife and your husband works here, you can have a hard time finding purpose and having a good everyday life. and that's a problem in my opinion, and a problem we should help try to resolve, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of it has to also do, I mean, the main happiness that when I talk to a lot of spouses, it's a lot about like their main happiness is just like working. They want to contribute.
Exactly.
And what happens a lot of the time is, they maybe some of them are pregnant or have kids and are here for a little while, or maybe like, okay, well, I'll be a stay-at-home mom a little bit and then I'll decide to leave and then or decide to work. And then the issue is that then because there's this culture about staying at home and maybe some of the negativity behind staying at home a lot of the time, then they don't feel welcomed or have such a hard time. And it's might not just be with women with kids or with being pregnant. It's just difficult in general, I think, to have that. And that's also what I'm trying to do with my company, is to bridge that gap to some degree. Like I can't do the intercultural communications part. I think that's also a huge part right now, is like the lack of it thereof within businesses, having that intercultural communication, the training behind it. I mean, I'm an American who lived in like we come from the melting pot with many cultures. We've had this for 200 years. Denmark, this is a very new phenomenon in Denmark right now. So it's something that could be definitely worked on. And there is, I would love to introduce you this initiative that's been going on in Aarhus for the past few years. I was on the board of the committee, but I had to leave because of being on, taking care of my 6-month-old right now. And it's called the Intercultural House Hjemdale. And what they're trying to do is bring bridge Danes and internationals together and doing activities. And I think that's a really good way to, bring like having something common like food or music and something that we all agree on, that we all love. We might have different tastes, but it's something that we all more or less have some like interest in, and I think that would be something that could be very interesting for Aarhus to really like back on. I know like Head Start is starting to collaborate a little bit with them, but I think that's it's one of those, or one of the many things. It's a deeper problem. There are different things, but it's just about working together, and finding that bridge, like exactly what you're saying, for all these little problems, to bring together. So
yeah, when you said you founded Career Denmark, I thought immediately, from what you just told me in the beginning, I thought it's a really good idea, a very good initiative as well. I think it's just a really clever idea, actually. So I would wish you very, very much good luck with that. I think it's an important company and an important goal you've set out to solve. It's a real problem, real issues. So thank you for that.
Of course, and I'm definitely trying, but I think one of the main the main challenges that I've faced with Career Denmark has been, even within the Aarhus area, is the municipalities, especially job centers, are not open, and or I feel maybe it's also maybe just or my feeling. It's always feeling, right? The reality is always another thing, but I get that when I talk, it's always just like about, well, we're doing this right, this is already what we're doing, but I'm like, yeah, but you haven't seen what I've done. Are you not open and curious to really, for me to give a chance and to be able to be that bridge, and then like being shut out is a very, very tough hard to do. I mean, there are municipalities. I mean, I've worked with Esbjerg municipality. I worked with the International House in Aalborg, Odense International Community, and I work with unions as well, mainly with unions, and also I'm going to be working with different AKASAs as well to help bridge that. But I think like I find that it's, the municipalities have been mostly worked with are because there are the internationals that I talk to, and they're always open to have a different opinion on how to do things. And don't get me wrong, it's very, very important to learn how to do things in the Danish cultural context, because obviously we're here in Denmark, right? That's the bloody obvious answer, right? But I think it's also important to have an openness to learn different perspectives and how to do things, because there's always it's all about cultures, personality, etc. And I think it's just and I think that's the struggle that Career Denmark has. I think it's just having that having people who are open. And I think once people give a taste or are open to the idea, then I think it will make things easier to help bridge that gap once you have open-mindedness. Because if you don't have open-mindedness, then nothing's ever going to get done. You know what I mean? So, but yeah.
I think I know what you mean.
Yeah.
But, creating startups is always difficult. Kate, I'll just say thank you for talking to you, and thank you for Jakob and Louise for the invitation. I'm running a bit on